Hey, everybody. Welcome back to I Know a Guy. I'm Anthony, and this is the podcast where connections thrive. Each episode, we spotlight aspiring entrepreneurs, professionals, and individuals doing amazing things. Together, we'll grow your circle, spark collaborations, and discover new opportunities. Today, we're meeting Craig Poulton, founder and director of sales and marketing at Smart Desk CRM, where he helps small and medium-sized businesses grow their tailored CRM solutions. With extensive expertise in the digital media landscape, Craig is dedicated to delivering innovative tools to meet the unique needs of SMEs. How are you doing today, Craig?
I'm doing great. It's a pleasure to be here.
No, I was excited to have you on. I loved our last conversation. You're doing some cool things, and a lot of people out there will benefit from integrating something like this. So I was excited to have you on to explain what all that is. So starting off, getting to know you a little bit, where are you calling in from? Where are you located?
Right now I'm in Toronto. I grew up in Montreal, and I moved to Toronto about half my life ago for the big city, the big lights, and I've been here ever since. It's a good business town. We are going to be expanding heavily into the US. Starting to get customers globally now. But yeah, we're likely going to be setting up an office in the US this year.
No, that's awesome. So you've been there for a while, so you have your places. If you have friends coming into town, where are you going? What are you doing? And where are you guys going for dinner?
Well, there's a lot of the typical things you have to do in Toronto. So we have a very nice harbor front. If you have friends who have not seen the CN Tower, that's always a nice excursion. But we have our small little spots in the city that are our own that we've discovered. I like to take friends there. There's like a great little Chinese food restaurant in Chinatown that nobody knows of that we like, and the owners are just fantastic. So it's the uniqueness of every city that of course we like to share with people when they come into town.
That's awesome. Yeah, I like those spots that is like, well, it's kind of the best kept secret. You got to talk to a local. They even know it exists. You have your main ones that everybody sees, but those little ones that are, off the beaten path, those are something special. So
they're the best.
That's awesome. So what can you tell us about what you do? What's Smart Desk?
Smart Desk is a 4-in-1 CRM application, and it's designed specifically for the small to medium-sized business. So it's not a Salesforce replacement, although we've had some converts from Salesforce, much to their happiness, I would say. It really depends on the type of company and what they're using it for, but we tend to kind of go after that small to medium-sized business. And we don't just say we go after that market. We really did craft and design a CRM that is for them. So I'll explain the 4-in-1 aspect of it and kind of some of the things that we've done. And I think after I finish this spiel, you'll get a good understanding of what I mean by that. So the 4-in-1 is lead generation, marketing, sales, and customer service. So companies need essentially all 4 of those. And typically they're found in, different softwares, and you've got to make them work together. So we built all that natively in one solution. So ZoomInfo is a very big competitor of ours. Apollo, not to name drop my competitors, but everybody knows them in that space. They're an annual fee for ZoomInfo. It's a monthly fee for Apollo. It's fine, depending on your budget. If you can work that in, that's great. But I know when I was starting off and I was looking for prospects, I looked at ZoomInfo and I'm like, okay, I can't afford that. That's too much money for a startup business. I looked at some of the other ones and I'm like, okay, well, if I don't use these services for a month, I still have to pay that monthly fee. I'm like, oh, I don't like that because I don't think I'm going to need it every month. So, a pay-as-you-go system would be just great. If I want 1,000 leads, I can buy 1,000 leads, get, top-tier, clean database of prospects. So we built that into Smart Desk. So we partnered with a big data company, similar place that all the big guys get their stuff from, and we do it as a pay-as-you-go. So if you want 500 prospects and you want to give it to your sales rep this month, you can buy those 500 prospects for under $1. Each prospect, of course, not the whole 500. And work it that way. So I think over time you save a lot of money, but you get what you want. That's one small business friendly thing that we've incorporated. The marketing is, your typical drip campaigns, e-blasts, automations. That's all built into Smart Desk. We have integrated VoIP system. So again, other CRMs, they offer this as something in their marketplace. So you go into their CRM marketplace, you find Twilio, RingCentral, one of those providers, you pay and you sign up for their service. Then you can integrate it into the CRM. It's fine. It is a solution. We've integrated it natively into the system. So what you do is you just choose a phone number, and literally in about 60 seconds, you've got a local number, Canada, US number, anyone you want, and you could be calling out on the same day you have your CRM calling your prospects. So you can load 500 prospects into your CRM, have their email addresses, their phone numbers, and be calling literally on day one of setting up a Smart Desk. And the sales component of the application is pretty robust. You've got all those communication features, workflows, pipelines, automated reminders, and then the customer service component. So you get a ticketing system for all of your customer issues, complaints, and things you need to resolve. So we've packed all that into one solution, starting at $49 a month per user. So that's the smallest, business friendliest thing I can think of. So we're building our customer base on that philosophy.
I love that. I love how you're like, oh, there's all these things that are doing it this way. I think it can be optimized and it can be, made better for an underserved, group, right?
Absolutely.
There's a lot of small businesses out there that are like, oh man, that's a big jump. If only I could kind of mentality. And it's,
Absolutely.
well, now here you go. So yeah, I love that. What is it that you love most about what you're doing?
I like the success stories. So, just last week I met with a client and they've been buying on a, again, fairly regular basis, not every month, but they buy a number of prospects. They'll run, like a 6-week campaign and follow up and then, nurture new ones as well. And over the span of a year, it's a small firm, but they've landed 5 customers and they pay they're a retainer type of business and they get several $1,000s a month per customer. They've 10x'd their return on the cost of Smart Desk using the application. I love hearing stories like that. And the reason why I love that case so much, because it's somewhat typical. I spend a lot of time with that customer, getting them set up in Smart Desk, getting them familiar with the system, making recommendations, use this mailer instead of that one, and, put your message here. I have a marketing background for well over 25 years. So I know a thing or two about how to communicate and get your message across. She took my advice. She integrated it. She used the system to its fullest. And, she's her business is thriving. And, I had a part in that. She did it all, but, the application and a little bit of my advice played a role in that. I could do that all day long with customers. So I'm always willing to entertain people who need the help.
That's fantastic too, because, not only is it more cost effective, it's, hey, I can only really handle this many at a time because we're only going to be able to scale at, a certain rate, and you don't feel like you're, missing opportunity that, it's, you do or you don't. So no, that's awesome. I really like that. And this all came about just because you were seeing what was on the market and, you're like, we have a couple things we can fix.
Yeah, great question. So I'm going to date myself here a little bit. So I started building websites in the late 90s. And of course, back there was no WordPress. There was a couple of software tools that made the process easier, but you really had to know how to do everything very manually. And I did that. And then WordPress came into the world and I'm like, okay, I can see how this is beneficial. And then, well, Salesforce was, there the very early 2000s, 99, I think they were around. But there wasn't a lot of small business solutions, which was great for me at the time because I had a web development company and customers were coming to us for every solution that didn't exist, which was a lot. Now there's a solution for everything. And then I saw how disjointed some of the CRM tools were out there, some of the content management systems were, and how customers were trying to put it all together and making a mess of it, not knowing how to do it, first of all, and find the right tools and make the most of them. So one of my employees at the time was a developer, and I thought, this guy's really sharp. Maybe one day we'll go into business. So we switched from being a service company to a product company. And we took a lot of those things that we saw that customers struggled with and built it in, like, not to get into too many features, but, we have a UTM builder, which is you can create a landing page link that tracks where all the information is. So you create that link in Smart Desk and you go and use it in LinkedIn and Google AdWords. And you got a dashboard in our system that tells you how many leads you're getting, how many your sales team is converting. So you got all these like metrics that you can look at on a dashboard and see how things are working in real time. And I've never seen that type of a solution, and it wasn't the most difficult thing to build, but having all of that history and seeing where people struggle kind of gave me the insight and the ideas on what to build into this product.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. I like stories like that. they're the most fun, where you're like, problem solved.
Yeah.
So yeah, and you kind of alluded to this, you high leveled, but overall, what would you say the avatar of your average client looks like, or what are the pain points that all of them are facing that if they're going through XYZ, you're the person they should talk to?
Yeah, they do things in like buckets, it's like, oh, we need to fix marketing. So they'll either hire someone or they'll do something internally and they just focus on that. They're not thinking of the whole collective system about how to approach people on LinkedIn, emails, follow-up phone calls, social media profiles, getting all that set up. When do you introduce that? How things get introduced to your sales team, when they get introduced. So it's a whole ecosystem you have to build. Of course, we built a product that touches on all those elements. So where I see people struggle is they just tend to put things in buckets. Like, oh, we're doing an email campaign. They take their entire prospect list and they blast out an email to everybody. Well, inside that group of people, you probably have different industries, right? And you have different things that people might be interested. Maybe they've inquired about product A instead of product B that you offer. But when a company typically does an email, everybody gets the same message. Whereas if you do proper segmentation, this is where a CRM is essentially designed for. You do that proper segmentation, you can say, okay, I'm going to send out an email to everybody in the manufacturing industry. Okay, how many people are on our database? Oh, we got 342 companies that are manufacturing. Okay, they've expressed an interest in product or service A, B, or C. Well, let's create 3 campaigns to talk about those and get that information out to them. So, you build a custom solution to something that is what they want, rather than just dropping everything to a bucket and hoping the customer will see something in there that resonates with them, rather than taking the time to do it properly to deliver a message to them that is exactly what they're looking for, right? And then you put in a couple of little tips and techniques that, I tend to advise people on, like ego marketing, as director of whatever, like addressing them, who they are and what they do. So it's not like, hey, Bob, it's like, hey, Bob, hiring manager at, this company. And we know the struggles of manufacturing and the troubles that you have. The message and the communication resonates with them right away. If customers feel like you understand their problem, they're going to want to buy your solution. And you can only do that when you really do a good segmentation of who your customers are and what their interests are. So, that's something I think a lot of companies overlook, and it's not even 100% their fault. You have a lot of business people that they don't have the time to do this data breakdown and have somebody, work on it for them. So it's, this is why companies grow and have to hire people. It's because, often business owners try to do too much. But it's a challenge for them.
Absolutely. That makes a lot of sense. What about power partners? What are other professionals or the folks out there that you might find a lot of synergy working with or a lot of collaborative opportunities with?
Yeah, we like to work with agencies because it's a one-to-many strategy for us. So if we work with an agency and they find enough solutions in our product, they have the option of, one, introducing their customers to them and managing Smart Desk for them, alluding to the problems that companies were having in my last statement. Or they can use a lot of the tools and features to do things on behalf of their customers. So if an agency is working with a customer and customer wants to do an e-blast, typically they might have a MailChimp account set up, but they can just do the domain name integration of their client within their own account and start doing all the communications, track the leads and everything. So it's a very robust tool for agencies. So I really love to partner with marketing agencies, web development agencies, sales-led agencies and coaches. We have a lot of solutions in there that those companies can benefit from and even enhance their own revenue because they can charge for some of the services that the software is capable of providing, but require an expert or professional to execute it. Smart Desk is that platform that these professionals can leverage their skills on. So those are really, really, our favorite partnerships.
Okay. And, what advice would you give a new or aspiring entrepreneur?
Know what it is that you want to do. It's like, oh, I have an idea. I think I'm going to give it a try. That's a recipe for failure. Take the time to a degree to take the time to research whether this is right fit for you. Okay. And if you feel that it is, and you've done your whole, you've addressed the size of the market, you've looked for fit, you feel there's a path for success. It's not always the best advice. Depends on who you talk to, but burn your bridges and go. Okay. Burn your boats at the shore. If you haven't read Think and Grow Rich, it's a very popular business book. Anybody in business has probably read it. There's a really good chapter on there on that. And that's what I did. It's not easy doing a startup company, especially one that's not funded. And, we put a lot of time and energy and money into this. And, if I had an exit when times got tough, it might have been tempting to take it. All my ships were burnt. Like, this is it. And, now we're doing very well. So that's not what your parents will tell you. Oh, make sure you have. It's fine. I understand where it's coming from. I have a daughter. I would probably say the same thing to her. But no, if you've got that vision and you see a path to success, you've got to give yourself enough runway to make it work, because you're going to get challenged. And that perseverance and persistence is probably the most important thing. It's not talent, it's not skill, it's persistence and perseverance to see yourself through tough times.
Absolutely. Fantastic advice. Doesn't matter what you're doing. You're going to have that. It's going to ebb and flow, right? You have to be able to weather the ebb. And like you said, if it gets a little bit hard, all it kind of takes is just to get through that little bit, and then you're on the other side and you're right back into the flow. But like what you said, if you have something easy waiting for you, a nice soft landing, you're like, all right, I'm jumping ship. That didn't work, but that's oftentimes not the right move. The only people that succeed are the ones that get through that. So be ready for it. So fantastic advice. How can small and medium-sized businesses use a CRM to grow their customer base?
Okay, well, self-promote too much here, but you have to really look at what your needs are, right? Does the CRM have the right solutions for you? And if you grow, what does growing look like? There are some CRMs out there you can get into pretty easily, and they have a decent number of features, but you're going to need the next ones that are behind that higher paywall. So when you need them, what's your cost jumping up to? Can it scale with your organization and what it is that you need? So if you make what feels like an easy decision early, but in 6 months or a year from now, it's 10x what it costs to get into Smart Desk, for example, right? Then maybe if you're evaluating whether the money was the right decision, it might not have been the right decision. Should have looked at that. So just look at what your future costs will be when you're successful. So anticipate success. Got to look at what integrations are going to be important for your organization. Do you need that integrated telephone? Do you need to export data? What APIs do you need? Understanding, that whole environment of what you're going to need. But for the most part, just speaking of CRM in general, most companies underutilize it, do not make the best of it. So even if you're using someone who's not Smart Desk, chances are you're either not spending enough time in your CRM or dedicating someone to make it work for you. We make sure that all of our customers are successful with it. I and my team are available for Zoom calls with customers to address issues. We have a video library on all the different areas. So making sure that the customer support is there. There's a lot of overseas CRM that I hear customers say they left because they had issues. They thought there were simple things. They couldn't find an answer. They couldn't get anybody on the phone. They were treated like a number. You got to look at that too on, how you want to manage your growth, right? And then, just one more thing to that. And what ends up happening when you've made the investment in a CRM, you're not getting the support from the company that you feel that you should be getting, you end up hiring a consultant who comes in and fixes your problem. That's an extra few $1,000s or more that you had not planned for. I mean, Salesforce has created a whole industry out of, not to knock them, but I've never heard anybody say that they've had a wonderful time with their product. They have to spend likely 6 figures on a consulting company to come in and make it work and upset your team. So you really understand what CRMs you're getting into and what you're going to have to invest in, and explore at least 2 or 3 with every decision that you're going to make in that space.
Okay. And then, just in that same vein, how can a tailored CRM solution improve marketing and make it more efficient?
Well, our branding and our tagline is "My CRM, My Way." So this is something that we've, I'm glad you touched on that. If you have to force your methodology into the limitations of the CRM, you're creating barriers to growth. So we say "My CRM, My Way" because, you can have 2 team members log in to the same area and the data is different based on how you've configured your views and what you want to see. So, if you have to struggle with finding data and clicking all over the place, it becomes cumbersome and you tend to just avoid it or just go back to your old school way of doing things. That's an important factor. We're listening to the market and our customers, and, with technology moving so fast, people want a product that they don't have to struggle with, that they feel that they can make it their own. And, we've built that actually into our product.
Okay. And then how can businesses leverage CRM technology to enhance customer relationships?
You can leverage it by using it. Again, so underutilized by a lot of small businesses. So using Smart Desk, great. You have all your contacts in there. You can enrich the data. with a tool within our application. Make sure you know your customers well, and then start segmenting. Start creating custom fields and putting in, somebody's name of their pet, anything. Just get to know your customers as good as you can and populate that data in a CRM, because do not trust your memory. And you want to leave a trail of information for the next person. So if somebody comes in to take over an account, they should be able to read the notes, read the emails, look at the communications, and get a sense of who that customer is without you having to go through your phone, your text messages, and find a bunch of information. All the documents and everything should be in one record. And at least with our CRM, it is. So utilizing it that way is probably, the best thing I can recommend to a business.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. A lot of people with any kind of tech, they'll get something because they need one thing solved, and then it's like buying a toolbox and only using a hammer, right?
Exactly.
There's a lot of things in there, and then for some reason they'll go and they'll buy other things to replace a screwdriver that they've never used, and then before you know it, they have this big expensive tech stack when all they needed was the thing. So yeah, it's fantastic stuff. Awesome. Well, I know we could go into the details about everything that it does and how it all works, but is there anything that I missed that maybe you wanted to add?
No, I mean, we could talk for hours, or at least I could talk for hours on this topic. No, I don't think we've missed anything. I think you've covered everything. You've asked a lot of good questions.
Okay, great. For those that have more questions and that would like to talk, how can they find you? Where can they get a hold of you at?
SmartDeskCRM.com. There's a good place to start. You can find me on LinkedIn. So my name is here. Craig Poulton. Search me on LinkedIn, connect with me. That's probably the best way to reach me personally, is on LinkedIn. I pretty much get back to everybody who reaches out to me there. You can see more information on our website about what we do and what's coming. We have a lot of exciting things coming this year. So if you're a small business, definitely reach out to me. There's a lot we could talk about.
Perfect. If anybody would like to get a hold of Craig, I'm gonna have everything in the show notes. So just go there. It's gonna make it as easy as possible. But have that conversation. You want to attract more business. You want to have that more built for you. Something that's meant for small businesses, not trying to pigeonhole what you do or pay way excess what you need to accomplish the same things or maybe even worse. So absolutely have that conversation. See what's all there. Reach out and then schedule that meeting. But other than that, if anybody would like to get a hold of me, you can find me at ikag.me. You can find more episodes, subscribe to our newsletter, connect with our growing community of awesome people like Craig. If you were somebody you know would like to be interviewed, you can also apply on the website. But Craig, I really appreciate you taking the time. There's so much there that people need to, start utilizing and start, optimizing. And there's more options and more opportunities than they know, right? So really awesome that you guys are doing what you're doing and that you're servicing, a bunch of people that have been underserviced to this point. So super excited. Loved having you on. Let's all go out, have an awesome day, and grow our circles. All right.
Awesome. Thank you, Anthony. It's been great.
My pleasure.